It has taken 1 year, gathered data from more than 1,300 sources and, on Thursday, released its final report of some 400 pages. The findings of the Commission on Assisted Dying are clear. There is a strong case for changing British law to allow for assisted suicide. Whether or not to permit the terminally ill to end their lives has been hotly debated for generations. Those in favour say that it happens anyway, that it is safer, kinder, and should be regulated. Those against say it would turn doctors into killers, that allowing euthanasia is the start of a slippery slope that could see the most vulnerable people coerced into ending their own lives. This week's report is not likely to end that debate, not least because the Commission was set up and funded by campaigners who already wanted to change the law. But the panel, led by former Lord Chancellor Lord Falconer, does provide a blueprint for how the government of Britain and other countries could legislate. It says that assisted dying should be available to those who are over 18, have less than 12 months to live, are acting voluntarily and have the mental capacity to make such a decision. They would then have to be assessed by 2 independent doctors before being allowed to self-administer a fatal dose of drugs. The British government says that it has no plans to change the law, which currently defines assisting suicide as a criminal offence that can carry a 14-year prison sentence. So, is it time to bite the bullet and legislate, or continue with the current, possibly ambiguous system? To probe these questions, we're hosting a debate in our London studio. I'm joined by James Harris from an advocacy group called Dignity in Dying, and John Wiles, who takes the other corner for the Care Not Killing Alliance. And over the phone, Dr Kathryn Myers, a consultant in palliative medicine, who also argues against allowing assisted dying. First question to you, John. In your opinion, why has Lord Falconer's panel got it wrong?
I think Lord Falconer's panels inevitably come out with a decision that one could have predicted, in the sense that the group of people on the Commission were selected because they were known to be advocates of assisted dying and known to support that case. So I don't think it's any surprise that the Commission came out with the recommendations they did. I think what is surprising is that the safeguards that they've written into their proposed change in the law are actually weaker than those that were in the Joffrey Bill and were criticised in the House of Lords. So our view is that the present law protects patients. A change in the law shouldn't take place because the safeguards that are proposed are unlikely to work and demonstrably haven't worked in other countries.
Would you like to just carry on with that and explain your moral point as well?
My difficulty is with this debate that we're presenting dying as a terrible experience, both whatever disease you have, and the story is always how terrible dying is, and we should give people the option of an easier way out. And I think what we should be doing instead is supporting people in the dying process. I mean, many people do die well. I'm not saying everybody dies well, but before we change the law, why don't we improve and ensure that everybody gets good care?
James, can you spell out whether or not you think the Commission has got it right?
I think they've broadly got it right, and it's a very long report. It's around about 400 pages long, and I think we need to take some time to fully digest their recommendations and to assess them and to work out the way forward. But broadly speaking, looking at the recommendations, I do think it's appropriate that here in Britain we seek to regulate and provide choice at the end of life, which provides upfront safeguards. John himself said that, and I agree with this, most people with access to good quality care will achieve a dignified death. But that doesn't apply to everybody, and I think that rather than having a law which in effect turns a blind eye to Britons travelling abroad to die or being helped domestically by their loved ones, what we need to do is to provide a safeguarded framework for assisted dying in this country.
Kathryn, over to you. What is it that you've seen in your work in hospitals that makes you concerned about allowing assisted dying?
I think the main thing that I see is, from my experience with patients who are dying, is that the selection criteria that Lord Falconer's Commission have chosen and the safeguards are both unworkable in practice. It's very well known in the palliative care community, in medicine generally, that it's very, very hard to say with any degree of certainty that someone is within a year of death. Prognosis is notoriously difficult to assess. The most public example of that has been Abdul al-Megrahi, the man accused of the Lockerbie bombing, who was said to be within 3 months of death, and my belief is that several years later he's still going. I also have grave doubts that somebody can be assessed as having agreed voluntarily without any degree of coercion. People who are unwell can perceive all kinds of pressure, and that pressure can be brought to bear in very, very subtle ways. Not all of it malicious, but nonetheless it's pressure. And I don't think we can always be sure that someone is acting voluntarily and they're not acting because of other people's interests being brought to bear. So I feel very, very uneasy about the selection criteria. I've also seen people who've appeared to have a settled intention to die. That's another one of Lord Falconer's criteria. Change their minds. In fact, that's quite common, that if you treat depression, if you treat symptoms, if you change the environment, people can come to feel very differently about their situation and realise perhaps that assisted suicide is not the way ahead for them. So I have grave reservations. The final one about the safeguards, I think actually Lord Falconer admitted this morning on British national radio that no system of safeguards will ever be 100% watertight. In other words, eventually a mistake will happen. And the difficulty with that is that the mistake will be that somebody dies who didn't really wish to die. And I think that's far too high a price to pay when we're told that the number of people this would benefit is actually very small. I think there's a real danger that far more people will be made to feel powerless and vulnerable if the British law is changed.
James, Kathryn raises an interesting point here. She talks about subtle coercion.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there a danger here? You know, we're in a time of austerity, budget cuts in hospitals, there's the possibility of greedy relatives. Couldn't this make some terminally ill people being coerced into ending their lives?
I think it's an important question to ask, but I'm not guided by a principle that supports choice at any cost. What is motivating myself is acknowledging that some people are suffering against their wishes at the end of life, and referring back to what Kathryn alluded to in Lord Falconer's interview this morning, what is the best way of protecting people? And I think what we can agree is that this isn't a theoretical debate. Whatever our disagreements amongst all of us, I think we can acknowledge that people are travelling abroad to die, that people are dying domestically, and we know that that some doctors do illegally, admittedly in relatively small numbers, but we're still talking significant numbers. Doctors are helping some dying patients to die, and the question we have to answer is, what is the best way of protecting people? My belief is that I would prefer dying patients who want to die, to control their death, to be able to speak to their doctors in Britain about their desire to die, to know that ultimately their wish will be respected if they meet criteria and safeguards. And that is a better way of protecting people, by ensuring that dying people are aware of all of their care and treatment options at the end of life, rather than being forced to take matters into their own hands.
John, James has been speaking about the right to die, that it is a right. Many people with terminal diseases have argued for the right to end their lives. Who are we to deny them that right?
I don't think the law should actually necessarily be committed to meet everybody's rights. The law is also there to protect people. And what I have concerns about, and Kathy alluded to the concept of sort of coercion, but actually my experience of managing people at the end of life is that it's almost the person themselves that feels the obligation to end it if that's what's being offered to them. They feel unwanted, uncared for. They feel they're a burden. And if society changes the rules, as it were, and allows them this way of ending their life, then people feel that instead of having a right to die, people start to feel that actually, now it's legal, they have a duty to die. And that's my concern, that these people, instead of, get feeling that the people around them will support them, the message from society is, look, we're giving you an opt-out here, we expect you to take it. So instead of the right to die for a very small number of people, we have a large number of people who would feel a duty to die. And in the time that 100-odd people have gone to Switzerland from England and Wales, 3 million people have died in this country. So the numbers going to Switzerland are very small. And I'd rather have a small number of people go to Switzerland than change the law and have an impact on vastly larger numbers of patients.
James, I'm going to put that one over to you.
Mm-hmm.
We've had this reference to these suicide clinics such as Dignitas in Switzerland. Would you argue that Britain should take responsibility for its own citizens and allow this kind of service over here?
I certainly wouldn't want to see assisted suicide clinics in Britain. I'm not an advocate of the Swiss model. But what I do know is that there is a better way forward. And I think there is an element of paternalism about this, as has been pointed out. But ultimately, what it comes back down to for me is whatever our disagreements around principles of choice and autonomy, it comes down to what better protects people. And I'm convinced that people would be better protected by a regulated law in which our Parliament has thoroughly debated and discussed the safeguards. And what I would ask of both John and Kathryn really is, what would it take to change their mind? What evidence are they seeking? What evidence they're seeking from those countries that have legalised and regulated some form of help to die that would change their minds. I know what would change my mind about my support for a change in the law. I'm not entirely convinced that people such as John and Kathryn don't approach this from primarily a principled objection.
Maybe put that one over to you, Kathryn.
Delighted to answer that. First of all, the issue of protecting people. I fear that making the assisted suicide legal with safeguards that can never be 100% watertight will provide less protection to the majority than the existing situation. I also think that this has been debated very extensively by the British House of Lords twice, and each time it's been summarily dismissed as being not something that would be of overall benefit to society, largely because of its potential effects on the vulnerable and possible long-term effects. And finally, evidence from other countries, rather than persuading me that it can be achieved safely with protection, is quite the contrary. I think what has happened in the Netherlands is really quite scary. Why, for example, if we were to legalise assisted dying with a cut-off for prognosis of a year, why stop there? Isn't somebody going to come along and say, this discriminates against me? I'm suffering from mental illness or a disability, and I may live 3 years. Why should I be discriminated against? Why can't I have the same right to assisted dying? So I think it's really flawed, and the only way to provide proper protection and ensure that people, for whatever reason, don't go down this route when they would actually prefer not to, is to keep the law as it is. I'm also very dubious about claims that lots of doctors are doing this already. There's been very good research to show that that's a tiny number, and that still doesn't legitimise what they're doing and mean that the law needs to be changed. They need to be dealt with, I think, in other ways, and perhaps shown other ways of supporting the patients that they're dealing with in that way.
I think James wants to come back on something there.
Kathryn has critiqued the safeguards, but I'll be very intrigued to hear what her view is on what safeguards she would like to see to protect people who are at present, and I think you can't deny at present, Britons are taking matters into their own hands, and I agree with you that the numbers are relatively small, but we're still talking about over 1,000 British patients per year are being helped to die illegally by their doctors, and surely we should shine a light on that.
The safeguards that you say you'd like me to outline to protect the people that want assisted suicide, I think it's actually the other way around. We need to be sure that there are safeguards for the majority, the overwhelming majority, that don't want it. And that's the difficulty. There will always be some who want something that goes against the general flow.
Well, I hope you would agree, Kathryn.
We can't always accommodate that without causing harm, perhaps where we would like not to cause it. And I think we will end up with always a small number of people who, for philosophical reasons of their own, wish to have complete control over the manner and timing of their death. That it may be that we can never do that totally safely. And the problem is that if we try to grant them that freedom, there will be a cost, and that cost will be borne by others, not by them. And that's the dilemma we have. And all I can comment on as a clinician is that I see large numbers of very vulnerable people, and my concern is how to protect them.
I was joined by James Harris from the advocacy group Dignity in Dying, and John Wiles from Care Not Killing Alliance, and Dr Kathryn Myers, a consultant in palliative medicine.